Okay. Hi, I'm Gail Z. Martin. I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, comedic horror, and a whole lot more. And I'm really thrilled to be here at Illogicon. And I'm going to read some short excerpts from a variety of books, really focusing on the new books that came out in 2018, which will have sequels and forthcoming books in 2019. So I'm looking forward to getting started with this, and let me, I'm going to be working from some electronic, from my ebooks, so I will be shifting a little bit between them, but we'll make it fast. So they're all, hang in there because I'm going to move from genre to genre. If something isn't quite to your taste, give me about 5 minutes and we'll be on to something else. So this is the first excerpt that I want to read to you is from our Spell, Salt, and Steel series. Now this is a series of comedic horror that I co-write with my husband, Larry Ann Martin. And it is set in the Bubbaverse, which is John Hartness's Bubba the Monster Hunters series that's been a very successful series. And he reached out to a number of us and said, hey, would you like to do something that is in the same universe but in a different geographic location? So the Spell, Salt, and Steel series is set in our stomping ground, which is northwestern Pennsylvania, and it draws on all the urban legends and the folk tales and some of the weirder mythology and history, and it is snarky monster hunting in the wilds of Pennsylvania. So this is the comedic horror series, and we honestly have a blast writing it. There are 4 novellas out that were collected into Spell, Salt, and Steel Season 1. We're very excited about that, and those are with Falstaff Books. So this is from the 4th novella, Close Encounters. What smells like wet dog sprays the tires on your truck and humps your leg? A drunk werewolf. No, it's not a joke. Donnie the defective werewolf was sitting on my front steps, shifted back to his human form, but somehow still smelling like wet dog. I had a shotgun across my knees just in case he got any ideas about my leg. One time, Mark, he sniffled, I took your car through the wash and apologized about the leg thing. Good boundaries make good friendships, Donnie, I told him, although to be honest, I'd always considered Donnie more of a rescue pet than a human friend. Donnie had shaggy black hair and mismatched eyes, one blue and one gold, and when he shifted, he looked like a big-ass Malamute or a husky instead of a wolf. Blue coat like a husky, too, and the one time I let him ride in the truck with his head hanging out and his tongue lolling, it took months to get all the fur out. He's not exactly fearsome, and that's the problem. He's too wolfy for the humans and too person-y for the werewolves. Father Leo got him a part-time job over at the slaughterhouse. Decent pay and first pick of the trimmings and rejects, and Donnie keeps an ear open for us about the goings-on we might not otherwise know about. What's got your hackles up this time, I sighed. Donnie let out a despairing sigh. He's a bit of a drama wolf, but then again, I know he's got it tough. The pack hasn't exactly thrown him out, but they don't make him feel welcome either. He's conflicted about the whole wolf-human thing, so he isn't in a hurry to find a mate and have a litter of little shifter pups if he can't feel comfortable in his own skin. Dating a human isn't really an option, no matter what you read in those sappy romance novels. I could overlook the shedding and the peeing on my truck and the leg humping thing, because who among us hasn't done some things we'd rather forget about when we were drunk? And I liked Donnie in the same way I liked Mrs. Carmody's rescued Labrador Retriever. It's just that the guy really needed to find himself and get a girlfriend. Pardon me. Preferably one who was just as much of a nerd wolf as he was, because coming home to find a drunk wolf puking on my back porch was getting old. I thought you had a date, I asked, bringing him a cup of black coffee. I'd already pushed him into the outside shower and hosed him off, then found him a pair of jeans and an old shirt, since shifters never have clothing with them like when they change back like they do on TV. Human, and she said she was allergic to dogs. He snuffled. Ouch. Have you tried a different shampoo? I asked, at a loss for words. I care about my friends, and I'd do anything for them. And maybe Donnie was more of a friend than I like to let on. After all, I didn't have that many. But I'm not real good with words, and I'd never be Dr. Phil. So giving advice to a lovelorn werewolf was stretching my limited people skills. It's not the shampoo, Donnie said miserably. It's me. I don't like to hunt. I hate raw meat. It's not like I'm vegan or anything. I just think it tastes better cooked with a baked potato and maybe some sautéed mushrooms. Is that so unforgivable? I agree with you on the steaks, I said, but I'm the wrong person to ask for romantic advice. You've got a girlfriend, Donnie sulked. After getting dumped by my ex-wife in a really long dry spell, I said, amazed to be having a heart-to-heart with a shit-faced shifter on my back porch. And I'm still a little surprised about it myself. I met Sarah when I was up in the big woods hunting a weresquonk. She owns a bed and breakfast up there, and she already knew about my kind of hunter. We hit it off. In the shy, awkward way two people who've been burned sidle around each other. But we've been going out for about 6 months now, and she hadn't ditched me yet, so I felt like the luckiest guy in the world. That's all I want, Donnie moaned. There's got to be a shifter girl who likes video games and Marvel movies and books where the monster lives happily ever after. Donnie was the sensitive soul born into a werewolf culture of jockstrap assholes. And while I'd gotten along just fine with my pack, or family, losing 4 of the people I loved the most to that Wendigo made me the outsider. My mother was already gone, and the attack took my father, brother, uncle, and cousin. My sister-in-law blamed me for surviving, and my aunt's family never wanted anything to do with me after that. And although I wasn't dumb enough to try to tell the cops that we'd been jumped by a monster, there were plenty of people around those parts that gave me the side-eye ever since. So I could relate, at least a little, to Donnie's problems. He blinked and made a face, and I wondered if he was getting a hangover. Without thinking, I handed him what was left of my Jack and Coke. Here, good for what ails you. Hair of the dog that bit you. Donnie glared at me. Is that supposed to be funny? Still, he downed it in one gulp and set the glass aside. Is there a reason you picked my porch to sleep off a bender? I asked. Not that I mind, but you're a long way from home. There weren't a lot of werewolves in these parts nowadays, not after some secret government agency came through in the 1890s and wiped out a whole pack of troublemakers. Those that survived either relocated or stayed real quiet, numbers dwindling almost to extinction. Father Leo and I almost never had to deal with a werewolf incident, and when we did, it was more to help cover up some poor son of a bitch who accidentally shifted himself around witnesses. I don't like the new wolves, Donnie said, pulling his legs up and resting his head on his knees. I knew for sure he was 23, but at the moment he looked like a tipsy 13-year-old. What new wolves? I asked, and as I realized what he'd said. There are about a half a dozen new wolves that came in from Buffalo. They were supposed to just be visiting 2 of our guys, but then they decided they liked it here. And your alpha's letting them stay? This was news to me. Mo Carpelli was the local alpha, and he was just as tough as his name and tattoos suggested. I didn't have a beef with him. He'd always played it straight with me and Father Leo, and the pack stayed out of trouble. As swaggering jock types went, Mo wasn't too much of a dick, most of the time. But I couldn't imagine that getting a bunch of out-of-trouble hotshot wolves would make him happy. Hell no, but they're staying anyhow, and that's going to cause problems, Donnie said. Which you aren't supposed to be telling me, are you? Because, hello, I'm a hunter. Nope, but I'm scared, Donnie said. I don't want to see my pack get hurt, even if they think I'm a mongrel. And one of them, Taylor, is pretty full of himself. Like, he might even try to challenge Mo. Mo can handle himself, and you're not a mongrel, I replied. And pedigrees are overrated. You don't want to get hip dysplasia, do you? Donnie's expression was somewhere between mollified and offended, but he wasn't sniffling, so I'd done something right. I don't think that the new wolves are going to go without a fight. Mo can't let them defy his orders, and the others don't want outsiders in the territory. Let me guess, some of the women in the pack are interested in fresh meat? Donnie sighed. Yeah, there have been some incidents. So that's Donnie the Defective Werewolf, who you meet in the 4th Spell, Salt, and Steel Close Encounters. And those are the Mark Wojcik Monster Hunter books. We just have a darn good time, and yeah, we swear a lot, but that's okay. So there will be 4 more of the Spell, Salt, and Steel episodes coming in 2019, and those are with Falstaff Books. And I'm really excited because not only are they available in print and ebook, but they are also available in hardcover as a collection, and they're coming soon in audio. So that's really exciting news. So I'm going to switch up. This is also urban fantasy, but it's a lot darker. We lose the comedic horror part of this and just kind of keep the urban fantasy horror. This is from the Sons of Darkness series. The series is The Night Vigil. Sons of Darkness is the first book in that series. It is an ex-priest and a former FBI agent teaming up to hunt demons in and around Pittsburgh and central Pennsylvania. Again, playing some homage to the part of the country where we grew up, because there's just an awful lot of uncovered territory up there as far as monster hunting goes, and so much fertile ground to cover. So the first book, Sons of Darkness, came out in 2018. We'll have a sequel in 2019. And so here we go. The abandoned warehouse squatted next to a rusting railway spur, the faded paint of its sign almost unreadable against the old brick walls. Too sturdy to knock down, too expensive to gentrify, the decaying building smelled of mold and dust, rats, and blood. Travis Dominic moved silently through the shadows, intent on his prey. Moonlight and the distant glow of streetlights filtered through the dirty windows and skylights, giving barely enough illumination for him to make his way. He knew his quarry had gone to ground here. The ghosts told him so, and the vision that woke him in a cold sweat showed him where to look. With raven dark hair and black clothing, Travis melted into the shadows. There. He saw the creature's matted brown coat as it eased around one of the pillars supporting the roof. In its beast form, the monster was the size of a large wolf or even a mastiff, but that's where the likeness to any normal canine ended. The Noxerer was a vampire shifter, a plague carrier, and it had murdered and eaten an entire family. Travis had come to put an end to its killing spree. He pulled a silver knife from the bandolier across his chest and hurled it. It flew silently and sunk hilt deep into the creature's hindquarters. The beast gave a howl, not from the injury, which Travis knew wouldn't be lethal, but from the shift the silver forced. Sinew and slick muscle glistened as the dirty pelt stripped away into bloody ribbons, and the body reshaped itself when bones broke and knit with a disturbing snap and crunch. The monster hunched, no longer on all fours, but not yet standing upright. A burst of gunfire cut into the creature and pockmarked the pillar behind it, fast shots from an automatic weapon. The beast bellowed, bloodied, but not seriously hurt. Then the bullets weren't silver. Fuck, there's a newbie out here who thinks he's Van Helsing. Travis peered out from where he'd retreated with his back to one of the pillars. The creature shook off the last gory remnants of its fur. In the half-light, Travis made out the thing that had once been human before it brought plague to its family and stripped their bones clean with the knife-sharp teeth of its changed form. More shots tore into the monster's head and body, but the creature did not collapse, needing more than steel to slay it. Then, with a burst of speed, it leaped into the shadows, intent on bringing down its assailant. Shit, Travis muttered, taking off at a run. I could have done this the easy way, but no, some Buffy wannabe has to fuck it all up. Travis held a coiled silver whip in his left hand and a Glock with silver bullets in his right. Silver and steel knives of varying sizes filled the bandolier and hung from sheaths strapped to his belt. He had come prepared to destroy the monster. Now he had to save the idiot who'd gone looking for trouble, and found it. The creature moved fast, leaping for its attacker with its teeth bared and its sharp claws out. A man cursed and the beast yowled in pain. Travis closed in on the scene to find a powerfully built blond man going after the creature with a K-bar in each hand. Every time Travis moved to line up a shot with the Glock, the combatants pivoted, putting the man squarely in his sights. As annoyed as he was at the interloper, Travis couldn't justify shooting him. The beast stood half a head taller than his opponent, but whatever the dipshit who had blundered into Travis's hunt, the guy knew how to fight. Travis might have answered to a different authority for his training, but he'd learned from some of the best, and he recognized the close quarters moves as elite military, maybe special ops. So perhaps the fight was not as uneven as he had first expected. Travis circled, looking for an opening, figuring he and the mystery man could double-team the creature. "Stay back! I've got this!" the blond man growled, slashing with the knife in his right hand and thrusting with the blade in his left. Unless those knives were edged with blessed silver, Travis knew the other man could harry the creature all day without ever bringing it down. "Get out of the way and I'll finish it!" Travis called back. He lashed out with a silver whip, flaying open a deep gash in the monster's back. The beast jerked and turned, recognizing a second threat, but shifted its stance before Travis could get off a shot with the Glock, putting the man between them. "I told you, I've got—" The reply broke off as the creature put on impressive speed, swiping its powerful clawed hand across the man's shoulder and tossing him effortlessly through the air. The stranger hit one of the support pillars hard, but he staggered to his feet, ready for another round. "Of all the stupid, asinine fucking idiots," Travis muttered as he tried to flank the creature. But although the beast remained intent on its injured quarry, it was clever enough not to expose its back to Travis. The stranger didn't wait for the beast to attack again. He came at it with kicks and punches and a flurry of expertly trained movement that would have had a human opponent down in seconds. The two long knives sank into the monster's body, and the thing howled in fury and pain. It lunged, and its claws tore into the fighter's shoulder, as the beast opened its maw and bared its fangs, lowering its head toward the struggling man's throat. Intent on fresh blood, the creature made a mistake. Travis dodged into position. He didn't dare shoot into the back of the beast for fear the bullets would go through and hit the man, but 3 side shots would do nicely: head, chest, and hip. The monster roared and tossed the man aside. This time he did not get up. Travis faced the beast, putting a silver bullet between the creature's eyes and through its heart. It fell to its knees, covered in its own blood and that of its would-be attacker, and leveled a baleful glare. Angry red blisters crisscrossed the monster's pale skin as the blessed silver worked its poison, fighting against the unholy energies that animated the beast. Travis reached for a flask on his belt and sloshed a measure of salted holy water into the creature's ravaged face. Travis raised a hand in blessing. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, let there be extinguished in you all power of the devil. He made the sign of the cross. Through this holy unction, may the Lord pardon thee whatever sins or faults thou hast committed. The Knox error that had once been a man named Rick Kors collapsed into a bloody heap on the floor. Travis doused the body with lighter fluid and tossed a match, watching the corpse go up in flames, assuring that it would not rise again. He ran to where the stranger lay, fearing what he might find. The man was pale but still breathing, bleeding from deep gashes where the beast had torn into him. Travis ripped strips of cloth from the man's tattered shirt and field-dressed the wounds, making it unlikely he would bleed out until Travis could get help. Sirens wailed in the distance. Travis hefted the unconscious man over his shoulder in a fireman's carry and dumped him into the back of his small black SUV, pulling away before the first of the fire trucks reached the scenes. He toggled hands-free dialing, and the call rang through. Have Matthew standing by. I'm bringing in a casualty. You're bringing someone here? John asked incredulous. Are you sure? He's not dying, but he's banged up pretty bad, Travis said, trying not to be snappish despite the adrenaline crash. And before we let go of him, I want to know what the hell he thought he was doing, playing Monster Hunter. So that is, thank you. A little darker, a little grittier, a little more serious, but that is Sons of Darkness, the first in the Night Vigil series. And again, just having a blast writing about that area up in northwestern and central Pennsylvania.
How did you learn to write combat?
I watch a lot of action movies, and I pay attention to what strike me as good battle scenes in books that I read.
Okay.
So these are Christian vampires, so to speak, or werewolves?
Pardon?
These are Christian werewolves, so to speak. They're a demonic kind of thing that is exorcised by.
There is this in this series, yes, because Travis is a former priest, and he was also, we find out, with the Sinistrom, which is a secret Vatican Black Ops group that fought demons, which loosely translates to the left hand. Yes. So he was the left hand of the Pope. And so, yes, he defaults to the exorcisms and the prayers that he knew because that's his most comfortable way of harnessing the light. Although after everything he saw and experienced, his faith is really in tatters. So that's one of the really interesting things that Travis and Brent, the guy that he's met in this episode, this chapter, have in common. Is they're both very much soul-weary veterans of a war that never ends. So it's a fun series. So I'm going to switch genres again, and this one is from Salvage Rat, which is Larry's new book, and it is space opera. It is action adventure. I usually describe it as Bonnie and Clyde meets V for Vendetta in a Firefly-esque universe. So lots of space battles, lots of gun battles. Does the physics work? I don't know, and I don't care. If that's what matters to you, go read somebody else. But if you want some nice, space opera, this is it. Just don't try to work the math. All right. So, Salvage Rat by Larry and Martin. Gunshots went with the territory, no matter how much Wyatt intended to avoid trouble. But here and now, this was not part of the plan. Space salvage was not for the timid or those with a tender conscience. Wyatt was neither. When the first shot sizzled past his shoulder, he had nearly pried out the last of the electronic panels he had come for, panels that were worth more for the rare metal in their components than for their long outdated tech. He dove for cover at the next junction in the corridor and wondered how anyone knew he was on the old abandoned mining colony. No one else was supposed to be here, let alone be shooting at him. He had scanned the place thoroughly. They must have come in after he'd already entered the mining base. Then he realized that, for once, the shooters weren't after him. They were shooting at a woman who appeared to be running for her life. She tore past him without a glance, and he noticed her civilian jumpsuit and lack of weapons. In that split second, Wyatt's battle instincts kicked in, just as a pack of 6 security men in gray uniforms raced down the corridor with guns drawn. Part of him knew he should stay out of it, that it wasn't his fight, let alone a fair fight. He knew it, but he leaned around the corner, aimed, and shot anyway. Damn it, she's got backup, one of the Grays swore as Wyatt's shots clipped 3 of them before they got a bead on where he was. Outside, those would have been kill shots, since winging someone in a pressure suit was as good as putting a bullet through their head. But he'd coaxed the old mine's main gravity and air recycler to working again. With only emergency lighting operational, the corridors had deep shadows. Requesting more men, the Gray spoke into his link as the others opened fire from where they'd taken positions at the next cross corridor. One of the shots barely missed Wyatt's ear. Screw that, Wyatt muttered, getting in a couple more shots to pin down the Grays, and then running like hell as he followed the path the woman had taken. He took the next right and headed down a long hallway with doors on both sides. Probably the offices for the old mining colony, he thought. Wyatt picked a door and dove into the darkness seconds before he heard the Grays clear the corner. The security guards thundered past, and he leaned back against the wall and let out a deep breath. Definitely not one of my smarter moves. Damn. Who the hell are you? It was a woman's voice. Wyatt blinked in the dim glow of the emergency low-level lighting. He wondered briefly if he should feel grateful or cursed that fates had him choose the same hiding spot as the woman. He took a moment to check out his surroundings. The room looked as if the mining bosses had just walked out and left everything behind. Furniture, files, even the pictures on the wall. Very likely, since it would have cost more than the stuff was worth to ship it home again, Wyatt thought, which was what brought him to the mine in the first place. Most of the time, salvage meant boarding derelict ships, and recovering anything useful or saleable. But when space stations and colonies started being built, occupied for a short time, and then abandoned and left to rot, the laws were expanded. Even 100 years out of date, usable stuff in good condition brought good money piecemeal, especially with the homesteaders out in the hardscrabble moons in the fringe. Enough to keep Wyatt in fuel and supplies for a while. Vandals and thieves had been picking at the place for a while, though it was off the main trading routes. Wyatt had a map and blueprints he'd picked up from a trader on Gascon, the great-grandson of somebody who had worked in the mine's construction crew. This job was supposed to be an easy in and out. Not anymore. You're welcome, Wyatt said to the figure in the deep shadows, for shooting at those Grays back there. She snorted. They'll think we're together, so instead of just shooting me, they'll shoot both of us. Wyatt could only make out her silhouette, but it looked like she had a weapon trained on him. He pondered for a moment, as he clearly remembered her hands were empty when he saw her pass. You didn't come in with us, and no one else is supposed to be here, she whispered, so what are you doing here? Freelance salvage, Wyatt replied. This site just moved into fair use status. It's been abandoned for a century, so I've got a right to be here. Take that. I know my salvage laws, even if I bend them now and again. Kaylock Enterprises, she said. We founded this colony, and you're wrong. It's ours for another 3 months. The clock starts from the Stellar Commission's license date, not the Interplanetary Mining Guild acquisition date. Details, Wyatt replied. She came here with the people trying to shoot her? So maybe I've got what she needs, a way off this rock. Wyatt slowly stepped closer. He kept his left hand away from the gun on his hip and kept the gun in his right hand pointed at the floor. That's close enough. Who are you? Wyatt William McCoy, salvage reclamation specialist. And who are you? None of your business. Remember, I have a ship and you don't, Wyatt said. Want to reconsider? She was silent for a moment, her weapon still pointed at his chest. Oh, what the hell, I'm in deep shit now anyway, she said finally. Elizabeth Parker, Beth. I'm with the Space Archaeology Department at the University of Seriton 4, doing a special project for Kayla. Or at least I was, she added. Since they're shooting at me, it probably means I've lost my job. Wyatt held back the laugh and inched farther to the right while they talked. And whether Beth was aware of it or not, she mirrored his movement. That meant the emergency light was no longer behind her, and Wyatt could see her better. Short, petite, attractive, with dark hair cut chin length, perfect for a helmet. Late 20s or early 30s, he guessed. Wyatt also got a better look at the weapon in her hand. If you promise not to shoot me with that statue, I promise not to shoot you with my gun. So that's an excerpt from Salvage Rat.
Nice.
And as you see, it is space opera, and there's going to be a lot of shooting, a lot of space battles, a lot of zap zap and pew pew, and that's kind of the way it ought to be. So the sequel to that will be coming in 2019, but that's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So very excited. We went indie this year in 2018, and we also brought, we were very fortunate to do contracts with Recorded Books for everything we brought out. Pretty much, I think 2 things haven't come out yet. So very excited about that. So it's all coming to audiobook or is already out. So I'm going to shift genres yet again. And This is from Assassin's Honor, which is the first book in the new Assassins of Landria series. Now, if you're familiar with some of the other stuff that I've written, I started out with Big Fat Fantasy, the big Chihuahua killer, blunt instrument kind of book that's 600 and some pages and could put a hole in the wall if you threw it. And I'm still writing that. The third book in the Darkhurst series, Reckoning, will come out in 2019. We brought the second book, Vengeance, out in 2018. And I'll be starting the Legacy of the Necromancer series, which revisits the Chronicles of the Necromancer universe 17 years after the end of the Dread, which was the sixth book in that series. So, no good deed goes unpunished. Actions have consequences, and even if you save the world and the kingdom, there are repercussions. And now all those chickens are coming home to roost. So that's the Legacy of the Necromancer. And those will be Big Fat Fantasy books. But I wondered what would happen if I tried to write epic fantasy without the epic length. Because people are busy. People don't have as much time. A lot of people who used to really like reading Big Fat Fantasy don't have the time to invest in a 600-page book or don't want to spend that much time committed to the same story. So, the Assassin series is kind of a different take on it. It is under 300 pages, but it has the feel and the tone of epic fantasy. It just doesn't have as many braided subplots. So I describe this series as if Butch and Sundance were medieval assassins. It is an epic fantasy buddy flick. So it's also lighter. It's also funnier. Some folks have said, yeah, okay, a little reminiscent of Fafner and the Grey Mouser or Michael J. Sullivan stuff. It's lighter in tone, although plenty of action and plenty of magic. So this is an excerpt from Assassin's Honor. Rowan Destweiler was a dead man by order of the king. He just didn't know it yet. Joel Breckenridge, King's assassin, bided his time and hoped his partner got into position to make the shot. If not, the evening would go badly very fast. The stolen cloak that he had taken off the arms smuggler itched, and Ridge tried not to scratch. He hoped that lice would be the worst of the vermin in the clothes he had stripped off the man he waylaid a few streets over. Ridge did his best to look at ease, accompanying two guards who carried a heavy chest of contraband swords, knives, and war axes Ridge had delivered on an equally stolen wagon. A third guard opened the door to the dealmaker's opulent office. Destweiler sat behind a wide desk, resplendent in a wine-red brocade frock coat over a deep blue satin vest. He had a broad, plain face with an off-kilter nose, broken too often to ever set right, and a scar through one eyebrow. "You're late," he snapped, barely favoring Ridge with a glance which suited the assassin just fine. He kept the arms dealer's stolen hat slouched low to obscure his face. "Had to get around the king's guards," Ridge lied. "Couldn't have them nosing around." Once he and Rhett had nabbed the arms smuggler, it had taken a while to move the weapons into a second chest with a false bottom and a nasty surprise inside. "Let's see the cargo," Destweiler said. "It better be what I paid for." He gave a disquieting chuckle. "The buyer is impatient. Then again, now that I've got my good luck charm, we shouldn't have any delays getting the items where they need to go." His gaze fell on the scrawny boy chained to one side of Destweiler's desk, the kidnapped nobleman's son Ridge and Rhett had been assigned to rescue. A small boy, perhaps 8 years old, huddled against the desk, trying to make himself invisible. Manacles far too heavy for his spindly arms and legs clanked, practically pinning him in place by their weight. The jacket and knickers he wore were made of fine brocade, sullied and stained by his captivity. The boy's hair hung lank, and his cheeks were hollow, so that he looked more like an urchin than an aristocrat's child. "I promise you it's everything and more," Ridge replied, opening the chest. As Destweiler's attention went to the box of weapons, Ridge scanned the room. Two guards stood behind him. An iron key hung from a leather strap around Destweiler's neck, and Ridge bet it fit the locks on the boy's chains. Opening up his sight, Ridge felt no surprise that Destweiler bore the touch of the Witch Lord, a psychic stain like festering rot. Destweiler had been a worthy target for a long time, escaping punishment for as long as he had only because Burke, King Christoph's left hand and the commander of the king's assassins, believed the man would eventually lead them to more important criminals. Then Destweiler got greedy, or stupid, and took the son of a noble hostage to further his schemes, and forbearance ended. Ridge restrained himself from glancing upward toward the second-floor windows. Destweiler moved out from behind his desk and into position. Breaking glass and the crack of gunfire were Ridge's signal to move, as Destweiler's skull exploded from the matchlock's shot, spattering the crates of weapons with blood and bone. The boy screamed in terror, a thin, shrill sound. Ridge spun around, grabbing 2 throwing knives from the top of the stash in the box and had them hilt deep in each guard's ribs before their swords cleared their scabbards. He dropped the heavy crossbar to lock the door to the office and dodged back to the box of weapons, reclaiming his own array of swords and knives before teasing out a long fuse from the bottom of the crate. Then he strode over to Destweiler's corpse and pulled the key in its strap around what was left of the man's head. Ridge removed the warrant from inside his vest and read out the charge as required by law. Rowan Destweiler, by order of King Christoph of Landria, you stand condemned of crimes against the kingdom and the throne too numerous to mention, but most grievously the kidnapping of Kelvin, son of Thad, Lord of Wendover. You are sentenced to death, summary execution, without notice or reprieve. He rolled the warrant up and tucked it into Destweiler's bloody vest, a formality. Ridge bent down to search Destweiler's pockets, curling his lip at the still warm blood that soaked his the shoulders and sleeves of the man's coat. He found a parchment note tucked beneath the vest and took it to read later, figuring that anything Destweiler found important enough to carry on his person bore looking at closely. Are you stealing from him? Calvin asked, still eyeing Ridge with a mixture of fear and awe. Ridge replied without looking up. I'm trying to find the key to those manacles because I sure as hell don't want to have to carry you and them out of here and we need to leave. He took the iron key off the strap and then stood and crossed the distance to where Kelvin huddled against the wall. He stared at Ridge in wide-eyed apprehension, unsure of what to make of his terrifying rescuer. His wrists were badly bruised from the weight of the iron, and the mark on his cheek suggested Destweiler or his guard had backhanded the child at least once. I'm here to take you back to your father, Ridge said quietly, approaching Kelvin as he would a spooked horse. I'm not going to hurt you. Are you a shadow killer? Kelvin's tone shifted, still frightened but clearly intrigued. Ridge had always hated that term. He argued that it made it sound like they killed shadows, but it remained what most people outside the palace called the king's elite assassins. Yes, that's how I managed to get them before they got you, or me, he replied with a tense smile. He'd had very little experience with children since he had left the orphanage, and none of his training covered handling jittery child hostages. You want out of here? I need to reach the locks. Ridge dangled the heavy key from his fingers before someone comes and makes this a lot harder. That seemed to decide Kelvin, who thrust his skinny arms and legs toward Ridge. Ridge frowned as he lifted the boy's wrists, wondering how Kelvin managed to move at all, considering the chains probably weighed as much as he did. The fact that cuffs came in a size small enough for Kelvin's thin wrists and ankles made his stomach turn. The key released the manacles and the cuffs fell away, banging against the floor. Ridge eyed Kelvin, noting more bruises. He wondered if anyone bothered to feed that boy, since Destweiler obviously never intended to give him back. Can you walk? Kelvin nodded. I think so. His voice still sounded hoarse from screaming, and the attempt at bravado impressed Ridge. Kelvin did his best to haul himself up, leaning on the wall, but his knees buckled and he would have fallen if Ridge had not darted in to grab him. Looks like you skipped a few meals, Ridge said, supporting the boy's weight. We need to be gone from here, and we need to move fast. So I'm going to carry you, and you're not going to complain about it. Garrett Kennard stuck his head in the broken window. Hurry it up, Red ordered, and dropped a rope down. Ridge gave the rope a good tug, then turned to Kelvin. Climb on my back. Now. Ridge crouched, and Kelvin scrambled up, wrapping his slight arms around Ridge's neck and thin legs around his waist. You'd better have tied this off to something solid, Ridge muttered at Rhett as he started to climb hand over hand up the rope. Just don't let go, and don't look down, Ridge warned Kelvin. Rhett's anchor held, and he appeared at the top to drag Ridge and Kelvin over the window frame and onto the roof. He gathered up the rope and coiled it over his shoulder. Do it, Ridge said to Rhett, angling Kelvin so he wouldn't see, as Rhett used a flicker of forbidden magic to light the fuse beneath the crate. Run, Rhett warned, and together they sprinted across the flat roof, came to the edge, and jumped across the gap, landing solidly on the next building. Kevin gave a soft oof at the impact and tightened his arms and legs to hold on. An explosion tore through Destweiler's office as the fuse ignited the gunpowder hidden in the bottom of the crate. If any of the guards had succeeded in entering the room, the shrapnel of broken pottery and iron pellets packed with the gunpowder made the threat of pursuit unlikely. A fireball billowed from the first-story windows as glass shattered into the street. Ridge grinned and sped up to close ranks with Rhett. He kept one hand tight on Calvin's wrists and had a knife in the other, just in case. The wind that raked through Ridge's black hair was crisp with the promise of autumn. Just enough of the waning moon peeked through the clouds to enable him to follow the path they had laid out earlier across the rooftops, abetted by the smoky lamplight of the questionable lodging houses and pubs below. Ridge's soft boots let him move silently and sure-footed. 6 years of experience made him graceful and fleet. The buildings crowded close together, making it easy for him to jump from rooftop to rooftop. Ridge had long ago lost any sense of vertigo, since he had been doing this kind of work since he was 18. If he had ever been afraid of falling, he no longer remembered it. He'd damn well better be there, Ridge muttered. He'll be there. They wove a crooked course across the rooftops until they were several blocks north and a couple of streets west of Destweiler's building. Ridge chanced a look over his shoulder and saw the glow from the fire in the distance. With the amount of gunpowder Rhett had packed into the crate, the whole building would burn like a pyre. Here, Rhett said, coming to a stop at the edge of a building with a stout, solidly built chimney. He secured the rope and held it out to Ridge, who grabbed hold, turned, and stepped off into the night. Calvin stifled a cry as Ridge rappelled down the side of the building. At the bottom, he stepped away and whistled, Rhett's signal to descend. Ridge spun and faced an empty street. He's not here, Ridge grated. He'll be here, Rhett replied, unperturbed. Racing hoofbeats thundered in the night, and a black carriage turned the corner so fast it rose up on 2 wheels. The wild-eyed black stallion bore down like it meant to trample the three of them, reined in at the last moment by the short, balding, pudgy driver. Right on time, Henri, the driver, exulted. Ridge glowered but said nothing as Rhett threw open the door of the carriage and they climbed inside. Calvin between them. The carriage started up at a gallop before they had taken their seats, throwing them against the side. Hang on, Ridge advised Calvin. The driver is a madman. So, thank you.
For epic fantasy book, working with Detweiler, it's sort of an English medieval setting?
Yeah, it's still kind of a quasi-Western Europe. It's not our world, but it's similar to that. But as I said, it's under 300 pages long, so it's not a lifetime commitment to a thick book. It's hopefully got all the things you like about epic fantasy and none of the things you don't. Lots of action and some humor. After the Darkhurst series lives up to its name. It's very dark. It's very grim. It's very gritty. There's still hope, but it's very dark. So I was really in the mood to write something lighter, and this is a lot of fun. So this is the first in the Assassins series, and then the second book will come out this year. Just a little bit about what else we've got coming up. We'll have a new Deadly Curiosities novel. We did bring out 2 collections of the short stories in print and collected as ebook and now audio. So the first time any of those short stories have been in audio or in print. They've all been out as individual short stories and novellas, where they've been in anthologies, but they've never been in a collection. So Trifles and Folly 1 and 2 are those. Storm and Fury catches all the short stories and novellas that tied into our Iron and Blood series. And The Dark Road is the second in the John Mark Vahanian series, his backstory from the Chronicles of the Necromancer series. So that book came out this year. And then we'll have more Deadly Curiosities, more sequels to everything, plus the new Chronicles of the Necromancer series. And we will also be bringing out a new Portal Fantasy series. So that is just in the works right now. But we're having a blast doing this. Part of being indie is that we can bring things out as fast as we want and write what we want instead of having to get a lot of permission. We also have some new stuff coming out with Falstaff books. We did Spell, Salt, and Steel, which you heard Donnie the Werewolf from the first 4 novellas. That's all collected in Spell, Salt, and Steel Season 1. We will be doing 4 more novellas in that world in 2019. We also have a new set of 4 novellas in the Joe Mack series, and that is a tie-in to John Hartness's Quincy Harker Demon Hunter Secret Council series. And those are set in the Roaring '20s in Cleveland. And then the Wasteland Marshals series is post-apocalyptic monster hunters. And that, again, 4 novellas coming from Falstaff. And I usually describe that as Boondock Saints meets The Walking Dead. So we have some, we're treading in some new territory. We're bringing back old friends, and we're hoping to keep a pretty ambitious pace. So we can't write quite as fast as you can read, but we're trying really hard.
Do you sleep at all?
Yeah, I actually sleep, a good night's sleep. We just don't get much else done. Now, you didn't ask me if I got my laundry folded. Any questions? Because we're coming up to the top of the hour. I do have a signing at the office hours out in front of the vendor room from 7 to 9, and then Orielis has a lot of my books. I'll have some books there at the signing. Falstaff has some of the others, so I'm pretty easy to find. But any questions?
How can people find you online?
Online, I'm really easy to find. I'm at gailzmartin.com. Don't forget the Z. So gailzmartin.com. I'm on Twitter at gailzmartin. I'm on Pinterest at gzmartin. I'm on Facebook as my profile, where I do most of the talking, is Gail Martin. And I'm also online on Facebook with the Winter Kingdoms, which is the fan page, and the Shadow Alliance, which is the Street Team fan group. So pretty easy to find. And one of the things with Pinterest is if you are interested in seeing some of the photos that inspire the locations, particularly for the urban fantasy from the real world and all the different cities that it takes place in, I have pages for that on Pinterest, as well as abandoned places and things that give me inspiration. So thank you so much.